Hello everyone, I'm here to tell you about Argentina. We will go through the historic roots, the political and economic situation, identities, trends and challenges, and a little bit about the popular culture in the country. We'll start with historic roots. Before the Spanish colonization, there was a population of around 300,000. The people were mostly hunters and fishers. The Northwest Highlands were a part of the larger Incan Empire, and during colonization, Spain found the first colony in what is today Buenos Aires in 1536. That same year, they found another colony named Asuncion, which is in current-day Paraguay. Buenos Aires, the colony in Buenos Aires was abandoned due to lack of food, and the settlers from there later moved to Asuncion, which became the first permanent settlement and became the hub for the conquest and settlement of the rest of the larger colony. In the late 18th century, Buenos Aires became the political center of the country, and on May 25th, 1810, the government of the colony declared uh, independence of the viceroyalty, but they were still under Ferdinando VII of Spain, who had abdicated his throne during the time of Napoleon. They were hoping that Fernando would return to power and that they would continue as a colony of Spain. Fernando did return to power, but he was still kind of a shadow of France. And so in 1816, the country declared themselves independent as the United Province of the Rio de la Plata. After the colonization, they had a little bit of trouble getting started as a country. They were very disunionized, really up until 1860. There was a big power struggle between Buenos Aires and the rest of the country. Buenos Aires basically tried to dominate the rest of the province. Finally, they had a constitution in 1852. Buenos Aires didn't join until 1859. They were actually first to join under military rule. And then in 1943 to 1955 was the era of Perón, one of the biggest political figures in the country. He rose to power. He rose to power by campaigning for the rights of workers and labor. He was actually exiled, and the country fell under military rule. And then he returned to power for 2 years, was reelected president, and then he died in 1974. His third wife ruled the country for a couple more years, and in 1976, the country returned to the military government. And during these years, they had what they called the Dirty War, where many citizens, 10,000 to 30,000, were just, they call it, just disappeared. They were tortured, put in prison, killed. It's just a very ugly chapter in the country. One major event was in 1982 when they went to war with Britain over the Falkland Islands. They ended up losing the war, and it's really an embarrassment for the country. And then in 1983, they returned to a democratic form of government, which remains to this day. So as you see, the government of the country is much like we have here in the United States. The executive branch is a president who's the head of state. He's elected for a 4-year term. The judicial branch is the Supreme Court, very much like the United States. All their decisions are final. The judges are appointed for a lifetime appointment. And they have the legislative branch with bicameral houses, the Senate elected to 6-year terms with 72 members, and the Chamber of Deputies with 257 members. that are elected to 6-year terms. So, a quick view of the economics of the country. Their major exports are soybean oil, corn, soybean meal, soybeans, and delivery trucks. Other major exports are cars, parts and accessories for the cars, and refined petroleum to make gas for the cars. And as you see, the Argentine peso is not very strong. It's only 0.006 of one US dollar. They have a lot of trouble with inflation in the country, which we will cover in Trends and Challenges section. So as you probably know from the class, Argentina is a very European country. 86% come from European descendants, mostly from Spain and Italy. There's 6.5% mestizo population. 3.4% is indigenous tribes that survive to this day. Much like the United States, they have had horrible massacres, genocides. The indigenous populations is, as you can see, 3.4%, barely. So as I mentioned, inflation is a huge problem in the country. Really, Argentina has had massive economic trouble since the early 2000s. Right now, they have an 88% annual inflation from last October to this October. They have a 6.3 monthly inflation, and the inflation may reach 100% by the end of the year. As I said, they've had economic troubles for decades now. Hopefully, they can get it turned around soon. They actually have a good manufacturing sector, and the president just announced a freeze on many consumer items, which will hopefully help stop the inflation, and hopefully they can get back on their feet soon. So when you think of Argentina, you probably think of Lionel Messi or the tango, a very popular, very famous dance. It originated in working class neighborhoods, the poor neighborhoods of Buenos Aires and Montevideo. It has many different influences. Both the music and the dance are influenced by African slave dances, European immigrants, and settlers from other parts of Latin America, Central and South America. From 1890 to 1910, the tango artists released stage productions and records, and it really helped propel the tango into the higher society of Argentina. Became very popular. It's a source of national pride for Argentina. And in the 1980s, there was a huge explosion in France, the United States, and Britain. Kind of a resurgence of the tango. It was really an international sensation during the mid 80s. Even in this day, tango studios or schools, they call them tango schools, remain popular where you can go watch tango dances or learn the dances from the experts. So here are the sources, and I hope you learned some interesting things about Argentina.